Thank you for listening to the Untoxicated Podcast. We hope you'll listen carefully and with an open mind to our latest essay from our Sober and Unashamed blog titled Cold Hands. My daughter's hands get cold. Not like normal cold, really cold. They turn a splotchy blue and white, which is visually concerning as a parent. It has to be some kind of circulatory thing. When we skied as a family when our kids were younger, we often had to come in to warm up because of Catherine's hands. For the rest of us, and most skiers with questionably fitting boots, the toes were the pain point. Even with ski mittens and chemical hand warmers, my daughter's hands would get cold. As a soccer player, it was fashionable to wear little cotton gloves on cold days. In Colorado, the girls play high school soccer in the spring, which means training outside in January. The fashionable cotton gloves were never enough, but Catherine didn't want to be the only teenage girl in ski mittens on the soccer field. She would come off the pitch and put her frozen blue and white hands under her jersey on her belly, searching for temporary relief. Belly heat was insufficient relief for my agony as I bore witness. Catherine is now a fourth grade teacher in Minneapolis. She lives 3 blocks from where Alex Preddy was killed on Saturday morning. So close that she texted us about it a full hour before the news coverage began. Catherine spent all day and part of the night on the streets with her neighbors. Her feelings and thoughts were a combination of mourning, anger, hopelessness, and resolve. The only thing I could think about were her hands. I still can't stop worrying about my daughter's cold hands. When we were Catherine's age, my wife Sherry and I lived in St. Paul across the Mississippi River from Minneapolis. We lived in an apartment less than 3 blocks from Sweeney's Saloon. On crowded weekend nights, it was often easier to walk home to pee rather than to try to navigate the patrons and wait in line for a urinal. While Catherine was peacefully protesting and honoring the life of her neighbor, she ducked into her apartment to use the bathroom. I was struck by the differences in how my daughter and I used the proximity to our home bathroom in our young 20s. I was working on my budding addiction, thinking only of myself, my comfort, my pleasure, my buzz. Catherine, armed with only mittens and hand warmers, is trying to save her neighborhood, her country. Alcohol rendered me useless at her age. My alcoholic example inspired Catherine to choose a different path. I could not be more proud of her bravery and resolve. And I could not be more worried about her hands, her destiny. The thing I cling to as it relates to the safety of my daughter is her feeling of responsibility to her students. She works at a school with a big Somali population, and her students have grown to trust her. She has to answer questions like, "Can ICE come into our school and take me?" And, "What happens to kids when their parents get deported?" She is determined to be a bastion of safety for her students, and that keeps her making sound decisions about her own safety. But the safety of her students and the safety of her neighbors is a balancing act. She is already on the front lines 5 days per week, trying to keep her kids focused on learning so they can have a future not dominated by fear. And now my daughter spends her weekends with a whistle and phone camera, shoulder to cold shoulder with her neighbors. And the only reprieve I get from my worry about how this will all end is when I worry about my daughter's cold hands. I have written about Trump's addiction to power. Like a family tormented by an alcoholic patriarch, when the brain hijacked by addiction belongs to the president, our whole country suffers the collateral damage. If my concerns about my daughter and our president have you convinced about my political affiliation, you are most likely wrong. This is not a political essay. I am not taking a controversial position on policy. I believe every sovereign nation should control their own borders. But I know enough about history to know there are only two ways people can be governed. The population can consent to the governance, in which case a small number of officials can lead and enforce laws effectively. The only way to govern people who do not consent to the fundamental policies is with a totalitarian state requiring brutal and deadly tactics and nearly as many law enforcers as people being governed. The people of Minnesota do not consent. Unless our power-addicted president finds recovery, he will not have access to the empathy and rationality that is devoid in addiction. Addiction is, above all, selfish. Unless he finds recovery, this can only end very, very badly. I appreciate the emails I have received urging me to stay in my own lane and write about alcoholism. Honestly, writing about the impact of high-functioning alcoholism right now feels like standing in the eye of a hurricane and worrying about sunscreen, or eating a whole family-sized bag of Doritos and worrying that the corn is not organic. Alcoholism has been the most impactful tragedy and trauma of my life. Until now. Now, a different manifestation of addiction has my attention. Even though most don't know what to call it, it has the attention of the world. This is my lane. As Mark Carney explained last week, what the world order is experiencing is not a transition. This is a rupture. In the lifetime of everyone who will read this, the United States has only experienced transitions. Like a swinging pendulum, sometimes we like the direction things are going. If you are like me, probably more often than not, you don't. We transition back and forth because a pendulum is the frustrating result of pairing human intellect and democracy. It sucks, but history has proven that if we value freedom, it's the only viable way. Free and frustrated. That's what it has always meant to be American. That is coming to an end. Thinking about my daughter's cold hands now serves as a respite from the predictable terror. If you read all of this and you still think I'm making a political statement, go ahead and unsubscribe because I can't help you. You are in a cult, and alcoholism is not your biggest problem. In a sick way, we are in a global petri dish, learning together what addiction does to a family and watching neighbors pull away, doing the only thing they can do, shutting their doors and longing for the old days before the consequences of addiction spilled out into the streets. Some of you are shaking your head in sad understanding. Others think I am blowing the situation out of proportion and still think I've crossed a line veering way out of my lane, trying to see connections that don't exist. I hope the latter are correct. I hope the ones who unsubscribe are right that I'm seeing ghosts. I hope my daughter's cold hands are a self-inflicted wound. Maybe I should shut up and buy some sunscreen and wait for the next hurricane to hit Colorado. Thank you for listening to this essay on the Untoxicated Podcast. We hope you'll check out all of our essays at soberandunashamed.com. And if what you heard today feels important, we hope you'll consider donating to our 501c3 nonprofit organization. Please use Venmo to send a donation to @Matt-Salis, last four digits 1412. That's @Matt-Salis 1412. Thank you for listening to the Untoxicated Podcast. You've got this, and we've got you.